What's going on, movie fans? My name is Michael Weer. I love talking about movies and I love ranking movies, and that is what we're here to do today because the month of November 2025 has come to an end. And on this channel, at the end of every month, what I like to do is take a look back at all of the brand new releases that I had a chance to see and rank them from the worst to the best. But just like in all of my ranked list videos, this is never just about my list, it's about your list as well. And so I would love to know all of the brand new movies that you had a chance to see in November of 25 and how you would rank them from worst to best in that comment section down below. Just keep in mind your list probably not going to match my list, and that's totally normal because we all have different thoughts and opinions, especially when it comes to movies. And finally, before getting into my ranked list, if this is the first time you found my channel, well, I would love for you guys to hit that subscribe button, check out all the different content that I have. Whether you like movie reviews, Blu-ray talk, or even ranked list videos, I've got a little bit of everything on my channel, and I'd love for you guys to check it out. All right, let's get into my November 2025 movies ranked from the worst to the best.
Here we go.
That is one big pile of shit.
No, I shot him. Bullets in the fall killed him.
So I had a chance to see 8 brand new films in November of 25. 4 of those films actually released in November. The other 4 were all streaming films that I missed throughout the rest of the year, so I caught up on them in November. And if you want any more thoughts on any of the movies we're about to talk about, well, I did quick reactions for all 8 of these films. That's where I give you guys just my quick thoughts on the film as soon as I'm done watching it. All of those can be found on my YouTube channel, and I did 3 full reviews for 3 of the different movies on this list. I wish I had gotten to a few more movie reviews during this month, and I am sorry for the lack of content that came out in November, but I got really sick over one weekend in November, and then I lost a cap to a crown. It was a whole thing, and so that also kind of stopped me from being able to talk and do movie reviews. So with that said, I did make it through all that. We are back. I am looking forward to December, but before getting to December movies, we got to do this ranked list. So let's get into it. Let's talk about all of the brand new movies that I watched in November. So kicking off this list at number 8, the worst movie that I saw in November of 25 is a film that had terrible word of mouth. That's one of the reasons that I missed it when it came out in September. I also had a really busy weekend that weekend, and I was like, you know what, with the bad word of mouth, I'll just wait till it's streaming, and that is The Strangers Chapter 2. And this movie was bad for a lot of reasons, but I think the biggest reason that this movie was so bad or so disappointing was that the story didn't really progress. The first film was a movie that I wasn't the biggest fan of. It came out last year, and that of course was a remake of that original Strangers film, and it felt like they just did a bad copy-paste job from that original '08 film that I really like, and they put it in Strangers Chapter 1 last year, and I did try to give it a little bit of a pass. I was like, maybe they needed that original story as their jumping point, and so they just sort of remade that movie, changed a couple of the details, but yeah, it felt very much so like that original film. They even changed up the very end to the reason for invading their home wasn't because you were home, it was because you were here. And I was like, okay, I don't care, that's fine. I'm good with what they decided to do with that movie as long as they're going to take it into a fresh new direction with part 2 and 3. And that is exactly what they didn't do. They didn't take this into a fresh new direction. They just sort of continued on the chase scene from the end of the first film, and they extend that for another 90 minutes. You know, at the end of that first film, they catch up with both of them. They kill the guy. They think they killed the girl. She ends up actually getting to safety, going to a hospital and healing in that hospital. And then the strangers catch wind that that girl didn't die. So now they go after her, which kind of goes against everything the strangers stood for because they were just home invasion people who were killing people at random because they were in their home. But now they're going after this girl like they have some sort of a vendetta against her, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. And like I said, the movie comes off as a 90-minute chase scene because these strangers in the first film, they were so methodical, they were playing cat and mouse games with the man and wife. Well, now they're so slow and they can't catch up to her, and she's just getting away from them for 90 minutes straight. The movie feels like filler between 2 different stories, and I don't know what they're doing with part 3 exactly exactly yet. There was a little teaser at the end of this movie, so you kind of see the direction they're going in. And so if they had a story for part one, which was kind of a copy of that original, and they had an idea for part three, it seems like part two is just filler that we didn't need. Because on top of this very thin sort of chase scene movie, you also get a backstory for one of the strangers, the girl that wears the porcelain face doll mask. You get her backstory, why she always asks, is Tamra home? Like, we didn't ask that question. We didn't need the answer to that question. And yet they built a story within this film, a backstory that took a bunch of this runtime for no reason. Like, again, it wasn't compelling. We already thought, okay, all three of them are psychopaths because they're going home to home killing people. We didn't need, oh, that's why she's a psychopath. Like, they really expected us to be shocked that they did that. And the final reason this movie didn't work for me was, on top of the bad story elements, going back in time, telling us a story I didn't care about, on top of this chase scene that seemed to last the entire film, we also had at least 10 minutes of this movie where the lead character gets attacked by a wild boar. No, I'm not kidding. A wild boar is seemingly let out of its pen by one of the strangers, and it tracks her down, and it takes its time trying to kill her, sit on her. It's just bad CGI, and it comes out of nowhere. It's so random inside the movie. It's like they had an idea. Okay, we have a random wild boar idea. Let's work it into this movie. It's going to be another thing that our main character is going to have to get past. Why? I don't know, because this movie is filler anyway. The Strangers Chapter 2 is one of my least favorite movies of the entire year. I thought it was a gigantic waste of time. The movie feels like filler, and I feel like once we get part 3, I'll probably be able to confidently say you can watch part 1 and skip 2 entirely to get to 3. But even with that said, I think at this point I could skip part 3 and I could be just fine, because part 2 was just that disappointing and it was that bad. At number 7, we have a very Jonas Christmas movie. This is a Christmas sort of sing-along film with the Jonas Brothers that went directly to Disney Plus. And right off the bat, I know I have this at number 7. Yes, somehow The Strangers Chapter 2 was worse, but this wasn't a movie that was made for me. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you all of the things I didn't like about the film. I'm just going to say I understand that this wasn't made for me. I'm a 35-year-old man. I have a couple of young daughters, though, and I thought they would enjoy this movie. And you know what? As a dad, for those of you out there who are dads, anytime you can enjoy something with your kids, it just makes it that much more special to you. So I was hoping I would sit down, watch this Christmas movie with my girls, and they would enjoy the Jonas Brothers Christmas movie. They would enjoy the hijinks they got up to and the songs they would put into this film. I thought they would enjoy all of that, but they didn't. My girls checked out of this movie, who are 8 and 9, by the way. They checked out of this thing at 40 minutes and they were like, nope, we're done. And so they didn't really enjoy this movie. And then I was sitting there like, why am I the one watching this movie now? But I committed to it. I finished it. I watched it from beginning to end. And yeah, this wasn't a very good movie. But again, it wasn't geared toward me. So maybe if you are a big fan of the Jonas Brothers, maybe you grew up with them, you're a girl somewhere in your late 20s, early 30s, well, then maybe you really enjoyed this Jonas Brothers Christmas film and it was made for you. So I put it at number 7. But again, I'm not going to sit here and dog on it. It's the Jonas Brothers Christmas film. I didn't expect much. At number 6, we have a horror film from Osgood Perkins. He, of course, gave us the film The Monkey earlier this year, and I was excited to see what his next horror film was going to be. And so this film is called Keeper, and Keeper is a movie about a man and a woman who are dating, and they decide to go on their first night alone together. They're going to go to his family's cabin in the woods. She's kind of excited about it. She tells her friend about it. Her friend's like, you guys haven't been dating that long. Just like, be careful out there. So there is that cabin in the woods element that drew me in personally. Like, that got me excited for this movie. And when they get out there, some strange things start happening. She's not sure if it's her imagination, just not being used to being inside of this cabin within the woods. And then he gets called away, and when he leaves, some really creepy stuff starts happening. And you know what? I liked the setup for this movie, but it was pretty generic. This was a film where all of the ideas they had put into it were things we have seen in the past. There was nothing brand new feeling about this Osgood Perkins film. You know, he comes up with these horror concepts and they're always brought up in the trailer, like a new trip from Osgood Perkins, something we haven't seen before, a masterclass in horror. And I'm like, well, we've seen that element. We've seen so many different Cabin in the Woods element films before. And then the thing that's in the woods, we've seen sort of things like that before. And then the thing that sort of brought that thing in the woods out originally, we've seen things like that before. So there wasn't really an element of this film that didn't take from something else. And not saying that that in and of itself disqualifies this movie or makes this movie bad, but the movie was just kind of boring because I didn't feel like we were covering any new ground. It's not all negatives in this movie. I did think there was some really great creepy imagery. Osgood Perkins is really good at that. And I thought Tatiana Maslany playing the main character of this film, I thought she did a great job as well. So I thought her acting was good. I thought there were some creepy images. But yeah, this isn't a movie I'm ever going to go back to, which is disappointing because while I wasn't the biggest fan of The Monkey, I thought there was enough new stuff there that it's a movie I would revisit again in the future. And I like the last film that he gave us, which of course was Lawn Legs, and that movie starred Nicolas Cage, who gave a great crazy performance, but then the story was really compelling. So I was hoping for a lot more out of Keeper, and I just felt a bit let down, very disappointed that this is the next movie he gave us. I hope his next film is actually an original concept. At number 5, we have Megan 2.0. Yes, somehow Megan 2.0 was better than the other films we already talked about on this list. That doesn't make it a good movie. That just kind of shows where we're at on this list right now. But Megan 2.0, of course, is the follow-up to Megan, which was a horror film that came out a couple of years ago. And in that film, you had an AI robot doll that was programmed to protect a little girl. And then it started to go crazy and it started to kill anything that came near that girl. And so it had some horror in it. It had a little bit of sci-fi in it. And it was a little bit of comedy as well. Like there were some dance moves that she did that felt kind of random within the film, and those made me laugh. I remember really enjoying Megan. I even bought it and put it on those shelves back there. So I had a good time with the first movie, and when I heard they were making Megan 2.0, I did initially get excited about it until the trailer came out. And when that trailer came out, that was such a disappointing trailer. She was yelling, "Hold on to your vagina." Like they took her character from this horror AI doll and they made her an action hero. They almost tried to do what Terminator 1 and then Terminator 2 did, where Terminator 1, you have Arnold show up as the Terminator, and he's the bad guy, and he's killing people. Some people even call that a horror film. And then in the second film, it's a straight-up action movie, but when Arnold comes on the scene, he's actually a good guy this time around, and he's protecting the little boy, like he's doing something different. And so you're like, okay, so you're trying to copy that formula. You're trying to go from horror slash comedy and sci-fi to just straight-up action sci-fi comedy. But it wasn't time for that yet. In my opinion, we should have gotten at least one more outing with the Megan doll as this killer robot, this horror slasher. There's a lot of creepy elements they could have done with it. She could have been deformed or broken like she is at different points in this movie. But again, if you put that in a horror film, I think it could have worked a lot better. And then maybe down the line in the next installment, you could have gone more toward the action side. But they jumped right into it this time around, maybe thinking they were going to capture that same magic that Terminator did, since this seems to follow that so close, and it just didn't work for me. The action scenes were somewhat enjoyable when you had Megan versus this other robot, but that's probably my only positive for this film. My only real positive. I did say in my quick reaction, I was a big fan of how they kept mentioning Steven Seagal, but that's kind of a joke. But the point I'm making here is that the story of this film, it was just kind of bland. Again, you have a new killer robot. This one wants to do something that's going to take out all of the AI on the planet. And then you got Megan protecting this little girl again. And again, it just becomes an action adventure. And then they try to shoehorn in a ton of comedy into this film, and it just didn't feel natural. Like in the first film, I did enjoy the little bit of comedy they would sprinkle in from time to time, because I was like, oh, okay, it's kind of funny to do that in this movie, because the tension has been there for the horror aspect. And so now we're just kind of like, oh, okay, we could use a little bit of levity. That's fine. But in this movie, they were just shoehorning all of this different comedy in, and none of it worked for me. It all came off extremely cringy. In fact, one of the biggest moments in the movie that was supposed to make me laugh out loud was this moment where Megan won't stop singing to one of the women in this film, and it's just this really awkward moment that was supposed to play as a laugh, but it just came off as extremely cringy. And as I've said on this channel many times, and many times this year, cringy is not funny. Cringy for the sake of being cringy is just not funny. So once again, there's another movie on this list that I was a bit disappointed by. It's a movie that I don't think I'll ever go back to. I won't rush to put it on those shelves back there. If I ever find it for like a really good deal on Blu-ray, I might pick it up just to have the collection. But yeah, Megan 2.0, it wasn't a movie for me. Coming in number 4, we have the film Eddington, and Eddington is a film from director Ari Aster. It stars both Joaquin Phoenix and Pedro Pascal, and this movie takes place in the summer of 2020, which hit very close to home because that was a really tough and dark time in not only my life, but in a lot of people's lives. Of course, at the time, there were mask mandates for COVID, and this movie really heavily goes into that. Then there was the death of George Floyd, and this movie very heavily goes into that. Then there were the riots and the protests, and this movie very heavily goes into that. And the first half of this film, which is a long half of the movie, was everything that I never wanted to relive again. And so because of that, when I got to the halfway point of this movie, I stopped watching and I was like, you know what? I don't think this movie's for me. But a couple of days later, I actually went back to this film and I finished it. And I was so very glad that I did, because you can't predict where this movie is going to go. There's an all-out crazy shootout at the end of this film between Joaquin Phoenix and a bunch of these dudes who are coming to kill him, these mercenaries, and it's a crazy scene. But that is not how this movie is set up at all. This movie has a lot to say when it comes to things like the COVID mandate or people buying into one side or the other, extremists on the political spectrum when it comes to one side or the other. The film has so much to say, and a lot of that does get bogged down in the first hour and a half of this film. But again, the back half of this film goes in directions that you don't see coming. There's a character's death in this movie that when it happens, it just changes the entire course of the film going forward, and I loved that. There's a death that happens and you're like, wow, that person really just killed that other person. And then from there, you can't predict where the movie's going. It is twist and turn and shootout and twist and turn and shootout. And there's so many just unknown directions that this movie goes that I think it's a movie that I would definitely recommend to people to at least watch once. Now, that said, I did put this movie at number 4 on this list because it is better than the previous films we've already talked about, but this is yet another movie that I watched in the month of November 2025 that I won't be going back to. It's a movie that captured that moment in 2020 that made me feel extremely uneasy. It talked about things that I really didn't want to talk about again. And yes, I liked what he did in the last act of this film, but I didn't like how he got there. And so it's not a movie I would watch again. It's not a movie I would buy on Blu-ray and put on those shelves. It's a movie that I watched. I'm glad I watched it. I would recommend it to people who want to go through that again, but that's about it. We've made it to my top 3 films for November of 25, and at number 3, we have the film The Running Man. The Running Man is directed by Edgar Wright. It stars Glenn Powell, and this is a movie I was really looking forward to, so much so, in fact, that I put it on my top 10 most anticipated movies list of 2025 because I was excited for Edgar Wright's next big movie. And while I enjoyed the action scenes in this movie and I enjoyed Glenn Powell, I was pretty disappointed by this film. Now, I thought they gave us a fresh new beginning to this character of Ben. You know, unlike Arnold in that 1987 film, Arnold was set up, sent to jail, broke out of jail, became the Running Man. No, but in this movie, Ben is this guy that's just down on his luck. He can't seem to get a job in this futuristic world. His daughter is very sick, so he signs up for this Running Man competition, a competition that he knows no one has ever lived through, a competition that no one has ever made it to the end of the line. No one's ever made it to the end of this month where they need to stay alive. And so he signs up for it knowing he'll probably die, but he has so much grit and determination. You just want him to win, and he's a fun character to watch. And so the setup for that character did feel fresh, and I was looking forward to the rest of this movie. And then when you get into this film, it just kind of turns into by the way, the greedy corporation needs to be taken down. So it goes from this one-man story of just trying to provide for his wife and kid to a whole rebellion plot. And the movie goes off in these different directions with these different members from this rebellion that Ben meets along the way. And it just felt like stuff I've seen before. And that's probably why it was so disappointing to me, is it didn't feel fresh at all. Now, I know this movie is taking off of the source material from that Stephen King book that's so old, but because we've had books and films like The Hunger Games, it just kind of felt like something we had seen so many times before. That's not to say it was all bad. Like I said, the action scenes felt like they were filmed by Edgar Wright. There was a little bit of fun to each one of those scenes. Glenn Powell does a great job in this movie. If you're a fan of Edgar Edgar Wright or you're a fan of Glenn Powell, I think you will enjoy this movie, and it's one I recommend to people. But for me, I felt disappointed by the story overall. The movie does also go on a little too long. Like, there's a spot where they could have ended it, and I would have been like, oh, okay, that's where you're going to end it. I'm all right with that. But instead, they go on even further and they try to tie up every loose end and every single character. And that's not something that they had to do. I wish they had sort of left it a little more ambiguous about where those characters were going to end up. But instead, Edgar Wright's like, no, we're going to show you where this character dies, where this character lives, what's going on with this character, and just goes on and on, just a little too long. Coming in at number 2, we have the film Caught Stealing. Caught Stealing is directed by Darren Aronofsky and it stars Austin Butler, who I think gave a career best performance in this film. He's very likable in this movie, and you feel all of the emotions that Austin Butler's character is going throughout the film. The movie also stars Zoe Kravitz. I thought she gave a great performance, and essentially this is a crime film. There is a bunch of money that Matt Smith's character has hidden away somewhere from a bunch of gangsters, and all of them are looking for it. And it just turns out that Matt Smith's character lives next door to Austin Butler's character. He gives him a key without Austin Butler's character really knowing what he was getting, and because of that, now all these criminal organizations are coming after him. I said this in my quick reaction, it did feel more like a Guy Ritchie film than an Aronofsky film, because like I said before, Aronofsky is more dark and emotional, whereas Guy Ritchie usually paints this really big picture, all these different moving components, all of these different lighthearted characters that you do kind of like, and then at the end of the movie you kind of see as those characters all come together. And that's what this movie was like. And that's not a negative on this movie at all, just because it feels like another director's work. It just kind of expands how I look at Darren Aronofsky. Like, he's now expanded his wheelhouse. He could now do these crime dramas, and I had a great time with this film. Outside of the acting, I think my biggest positive for this movie, and the reason I would go back to this movie in the future, is that there's a character death that happens at about the halfway point of this movie, and when that character death happens, you realize any character in this film can and probably will die. And so at that point, it's just jolting death after jolting death where you're like, that person's gonna die now? Like, nobody is safe. And it really sets the tone with that first death, and I really like that they did that. They went there, because most of the time directors play it safe, the story plays it safe, and they want to keep this core cast of characters making it to the very end. But this movie did a really good job not doing that and sort of making you not know which direction it was going to go or what character was going to make it to the end of the film. And that'll lead me to my number 1 pick for November of 2025, and it is Predator: Badlands. This is another movie that was on my top 10 most anticipated list, but this one did not disappoint me. I had so much fun with this movie. It's directed by Dan Trachtenberg, who of course directed Prey, which was a live-action Predator film that came out a couple of years ago, and I really loved what he did with that movie. He also directed the Predator animated film that came out earlier this year on Hulu called Predator: Killer of Killers, and I really liked what he did with that movie. So this is now his 3rd entry into the Predator franchise, and the man is just on fire. I want to watch more movies in the Predator universe directed by Dan Trachtenberg. There were a lot of things I really loved about Predator: Badlands, and I'll give you 3 of them here. The first one is the action scenes. They were so much fun. I really loved watching the Predator go up against these different monsters, these different robots, and I was worried going into the film because it's rated PG-13 and not rated R. All the previous Predator films have been rated R, but it turns out if you're not killing humans and spilling blood, well, then you can have a PG-13 rating, but still be incredibly brutal. You can watch someone get decapitated at the beginning of the film, and it's not going to be rated R. I thought that was cool. Like, they were able to find a way around the R rating, but still make the action scenes badass. The next thing I really loved about this movie was the way they were able to incorporate Wayland Yutani and the Alien franchise into the Predator franchise. Clearly, they have a plan to have a Predator and a Xenomorph face off against each other in the future, and this was the first stepping stone to getting there. I really loved how they were able to build into this universe. They were able to send synth robots to this planet, which again was a little bit of the flavor we've just gotten from Alien Earth, talking about synths, and so I thought it was really cool that they found a way to incorporate the Alien franchise into the Predator franchise once again, and it looks like they're building building towards something big. And the final positive that I'll give you for this movie right here was the story. I really loved following the Predator as the good guy this time around. In the past, it's always the Predator going up against a human that we need to root for. The Predator's awesome, the Predator's badass, but he's always the bad guy. And so you're always rooting for the human. I love that original Predator film with Arnold, and I'm not the biggest fan of Predator 2 with Danny Glover, but again, you're always rooting for the human. This time around, you are rooting for the main Predator that you're following. He watches his brother get slaughtered by his dad at the beginning of the film. He then jets off to another planet to try and stop this big bad monster. And I love the journey that this Predator goes on, because he goes from being this killer that's on his own all the time to actually forming a friend group. And there's a lot of people out there that didn't like that aspect of the story, but I had a decent enough time with the story of this film, the Predator sort of going on an emotional journey. Not something I thought we'd get, but we did get it. I guess it's not all perfect. I did have some negatives for Predator Badlands. I'll give you one of them here, and that was just the idea of the Predator talking for the entire movie. It was weird as an audience member fully understanding what the Predator was saying because they kept putting subtitles under him. I get that it's a species, it does talk, it does communicate, but I don't think we've ever really gone down that path. And so it was just weird, like, understanding the Predator. But I still had fun with the movie. It's still my favorite movie for November of 2025. And guys, those are all the brand new movies that I had a chance to see in November of 2025. Don't forget to throw your ranked list of all the brand new movies that you saw in November of 25 in that comment section down below. And finally, guys, if you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button, because it helps the video, it helps the channel, and it helps me right here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. All right, guys, we got to the end of my November 2025 movies ranked from worst to best list. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's a video series that I really enjoy doing. And yes, when we get to the end of December, I will have a December wrap-up video where I give you my entire ranked list from all the movies I saw in December of 25. But I'll also have all of my year-end top 10 lists. I'm really looking forward to sharing all of those with you guys. So be on the lookout on my channel in the next month for all of that content. And in the meantime, if you want to check out any of the other content on my channel, well, I've got all of my best and worst of 2025 right there, and I've got all of my 2025 movie reviews right there.